This video will explain the need for Black male politicians to integrate within the dominant political discourse that denies the need for racial dialogue. It includes general history of Black men within politics and the irony of racial platforms designed to secure Black support while ignoring Black needs. We argue that Black male representation we see in politics does not concur with the representation of the Black community within policymaking due to fear and control of whites and the need for Black politicians to affiliate with moderate ideology. It is necessary for Black men to follow racial etiquette and respectability politics that allow independent economic agency for a Black male politician while denying him the ability to assist in Black progress and economic dependence. There have been 124 politicians elected into Congress since 1869, the first two being Republicans Hiram Rhodes Revels and Joseph H. Rainey. 91 Black men have been elected into Congress between the years of 1869 and 2008, and 21 have held leadership positions. In 1970, the Congressional Black Caucus was formed in Congress to promote the public welfare through legislation designed to meet the needs of millions of neglected citizens, as the founders believed working together would produce more visibility and power to marginalized communities in assisting to achieve the American dream. According to the Negro Yearbook, the enrollment of Black membership from the Republican Party into the Democrat Party in large numbers began in the 1920s. While this trend continued into the 1930s, both the Republican and Democratic parties attempted to attain and secure Black support by setting up committees specifically to design racial political platforms, including the promise of Black civil and political rights. While both parties claimed representation of Black people within policies, the growing involvement of Black male politicians posed a threat to white America, and they were faced with resentment. An example of this resentment is when 9 South Carolina delegates walked out of the 1924 Democratic National Convention in response to the Black representation in attendance. This included a Black reverend chairing the opening prayer. But how does this policing of Black men impact their political agency and independence? The integration of Black men within politics was assisted significantly by independent Black politics as a result of being barred from the Republican Party and conventions, and the necessity of introducing a representative of and for Black people, specifically with the need of Black support within swing vote situations. Growing racial pride, more faith in Negro leadership, and manifestations of racial consciousness indicated the allowance to greater participation within politics, specifically through the organizing of the Black community. Organizations enforced with racial consciousness are witnessed distinctly within the era of Black pride, focusing on Black culture, mentality, and independence, in which it is argued by some Black men, such as Stokely Carmichael, that the success of Black political power necessitates the separation from whites. This radical ideology, shared by Black male leaders, was an obstacle in attempting to gain political office. This can be seen when a former faculty member of Ohio University's Afro-American Studies program, James Steele, ran for Congress in 1974. He focused on class issues and was associated with communism and Marxist-Leninists. This could be argued as the reason why he was unsuccessful in running. For Black male politicians who do succeed to Congress, they are held to different standards than their white counterparts due to a white consciousness of racial consciousness, specifically within high-ranking seats. It is plausible that some whites believe that if they support Blacks for high-profile statewide office, Blacks will cater to African Americans to the detriment of whites. The success of Black male politicians is based upon their level of Blackness or whiteness. Contemporarily, whiteness is associated with Republican or conservative ideology, while Blackness is associated with liberalism or radicalism. This association allows for the policing of Black male political ideology and an inability to succeed in Congress for Black men as Black men. This means that for Black male politicians to succeed, they must participate in political incorporation, where a group must integrate into the system in a manner consistent with the interests of the regime's dominant political coalition. Black men must not only incorporate politically, but also respectability-wise and behaviorally, including speech, dress, and character. This question of racial significance is argued to be on the decline and unnecessary when speaking on political issues. But is this possible when the race of the representative is determinant in their success? It is seen that white voters support white candidates running for the opposing political party rather than assisting in success of their own affiliation due to racial ideologies whose existence is argued. Even when denying race is the cause, white voters have found them to be ideologically incompatible with their views as well as poorly qualified, showing that whites associate race with assumed political ideology. The political incorporation not only affects the black male politician, but it influences the black public opinion as well through discourse and policy endorsing that pertain to and accommodate the dominant right political ideology within the congressional sphere. According to Tate, black political incorporation is only accessible with the companionship of the decline of radicalism among political leaders, although this instills that black policy opinion is now formed in the national arena without meaningful regard to the racial implications of public policies. This lack of racial consciousness forces the black male politician to ignore a physical attribute that is controlling of many black men's everyday lives, including influence of the ideology behind public policies. This is helpful to the dominant affiliation due to the fact that blacks are more likely to form more conservative options about policies lacking a racial frame. This means that black political leaders have to accommodate the conservative ideology, ignoring racial relations in order to attain individual political success, specifically on public policies pertaining to social programs. This need to accommodate or assimilate to the dominant ideology has placed black male politicians within the category of tokenism or sellout, to allow black political representation without allowing it in policies or legislation. It has created a leadership more and more committed to routine politics when it knows more fundamental changes are necessary to improve the social and economic status of the vast majority of blacks. Media entrepreneur William Reed states, masses of blacks are under a false promise of black political representation. Black elected officials are too busy representing the interests of all people and not just one race. Black political operatives are resistant to legislation, laws, or practices that are race specific. In essence, the masses of blacks and middle class just want to along to get along. Thus, black voters' issues are routinely ignored and overlooked, resulting in African Americans being left behind. One example of the use of black male politicians as a compromise to keep the general black and liberal population somewhat at bay is the election of Tim Scott in 2008. He was the first black senator from the South since Reconstruction and only the second black male Republican to ever be seated in the United States Senate. And because of his political ideology and lack of racial consciousness, political scientist Adolph L. Reed Jr. cautioned against cheerleading over racial symbolism and suggested that Scott was merely the latest in a long line of cynical tokens put forward by Republicans. He was a wealthy business owner, allowing him to integrate himself within the Republican Party for almost 20 years before being elected into the Senate. He was unable to be back and Republican due to the questioning of authenticity of his blackness and Republican beliefs because they are so commonly perceived to be in opposition, as blackness has been categorized with liberalism. This all leads to the idea that the only serious result of centuries of actions attempting political justice, independence, and agency has been the greatest bifurcation of the black population experienced in American history. This inability to address on race within policies in the office deny black men the ability to protect black people economically and politically while being forced to pertain to white ideology and etiquette. Although allowing for individual economic stability, they are unable to assist the rest of Black America to do the same, specifically within public policies involving social welfare. Racialized policies such as those involving welfare, the criminal justice system, and housing force a lack of control to aid the black community as black male politicians are unable to argue against due to their need to integrate to moderate beliefs. These black men are also questioned about the authenticity of their blackness as they relay dominant white ideology and characteristics, specifically speaking as social policies reinforce racist stereotypes and ideology. Since the enslavement of black men, they have been criticized as unable to protect and afford for family, and this has continued through the denial of power within their political status to aid black progress. Black men are unable to control their own ideology and beliefs as they enter politics based on the acceptability of white America's dominant political ideologies and respectability. This politic of respectability requires policing of their dress, speech, and physical characteristics addressing blackness versus integrated whiteness. White ideology continues to control black men's ability to make decisions and access to political agency. Not only are they policed by voters and fellow politicians, but the media as well.
How have Black male politicians assisted in shaping and deconstructing public Black masculinity through respectability politics presented on their political platforms via media, legislation, and rhetoric? Respectability politics can be understood as what results from the stigmatization of minorities and or marginalized groups and their efforts to claim respectability through manners and morality, furnishing an avenue for African Americans to assert the will and agency to redefine themselves outside the prevailing racist discourses. Quoted by Gross in 1997. Originally, the ideas of respectability politics were intended to, in a sense, prove to the white people of America that blacks were worthy of better treatment. Under these ideas, better behavior would equal better treatment. The demonstrations of respectability politics through the platform of Black politicians assist in shaping and reconstructing Black masculinity in a negative, assertive way by demanding the radical change in behaviors typically associated with Black people in America and replacing policy with respectability to defeat social discrimination. A modern example of Black politicians assisting in shaping and deconstructing public Black masculinity can be seen through the mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, in 2011. Nutter spoke to a Black community in the city recently destroyed by a violent flash mob. He said to this community, "If you want all of us, Black, white, or any other color, if you want us to respect you, if you want us to look at you in a different way, if you want us to not be afraid to walk down the same side of the street with you, if you want folks to not jump out of the elevator when you get on, if you want folks to stop following you around in stores when you're out shopping, if you want somebody to offer you a job or an internship somewhere, if you don't want folks to be looking in on or trying to go a different direction when they see 2 or 20 of you coming down the street, then stop acting like idiots and fools out in the streets of the city of Philadelphia." He concluded by addressing the young African American teens with these parting words: "You've damaged yourself, you've damaged other people, you've damaged your peers, and quite frankly, you've damaged your race." Quoted by Mayor Nutter in 2011.
Michael Nutter, Mayor Nutter, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. Hey, I want to talk to you.
Thank you.
I want to talk to you not about this, not just about the curfew. You're doing it from two ways. You're getting tough. You're saying that you're going to get tough on kids who are out there rampaging, but you also have another message for parents and for these kids that you delivered at your church this Saturday. I just want to play that for our viewers.
You damage yourself. You damage another person. You damage your peers. And quite honestly, you damage your own race.
I've heard you talk tough before. That was pretty tough. How did that go over?
Well, actually, it went over very, very well. That was at my church, at Mount Carmel Baptist Church in West Philadelphia. I've been a member there for 25 years. Was married there. Have a long history with the pastor, Reverend Campbell. But Allie, it was also a very balanced message. And I think the folks at church and since then have really gotten it. That teens need to make better decisions. Parents need to step up and take care of their children. We as a government cannot raise people's children. You want to have children, you have to take care of them. We can help you. We provide services, support, all kinds of stuff. But we are not going to tolerate this kind of senseless, stupid, ignorant, violent acts, even episodically as they may occur on the streets of our city. We are a great city. We're a great international city and a growing city. And we've also offered some very positive things to young people as well. We extended the hours of operation for about 20 recreational centers all across the city. We have community members who are stepping up and participating with us in our I Pledge campaign and volunteering their time, especially on the weekends, to be out to make sure that young people are safe.
Well, how do you deal with Youth Commission? How do you deal with, look, on July 29th, this is probably one of the more serious ones, there's a flash mob, or I don't know who they were, but they beat some strangers up.
And a random group of young people.
Right, and an 11-year-old boy was arrested. How do you combat that? Well, have you got the policing to do that? Have you got the technology, the methodology to know where these kids are going and how to intervene?
Well, certainly, I won't say on TV here, but we're certainly trying to be more anticipatory, I guess, if you will, about things, not just reactive. And so we engage in the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and other ways that young people are communicating, and we're getting much more information. But this is really about personal responsibility. Again, young people making better decisions, being more engaged in positive activities, which we're trying to provide as a city. But ultimately, this is about what's going on at home. What are parents doing with their children? Do you know where your child is? I mean, we have a thing, when I was a kid that was on TV, I brought that back. It's 10 o'clock at night. Do you know where your children are? I mean, that's really something that people need to think about and deal with. And if you, again, need help, our Department of Human Services, our community behavioral health services, and other social service providers, we can provide help and support for parents. Look, it's tough raising kids. I have two kids. One's a teenager right now. So, I mean, I have an understanding of what some of our parents are facing, but others are in some very challenging situations. And I appreciate that and understand that. But there is no excuse for young people being out so late at night by themselves and then making bad decisions and literally assaulting other citizens. I will not tolerate that, and that's what we're doing. So it's some tough love. There's some stick, but there's a whole lot of carrots that go with this. And if young people get themselves together, we're going to have a positive summer, a safe summer, and less than a month, they'll all be back in school, and things will certainly be better for them. But we're not tolerating any nonsense. That's over.
All right, Mayor Nutter, as you know, I'm one of those people who likes walking around City Center, Philadelphia. So
I know you
for being with us. Your kids who are out there.
In this speech to his constituents, Mayor Nutter, a young black man himself, failed to acknowledge the lack of opportunities for black youth in his city, relentless racism, national unemployment rates, or any of the legislation that had been passed limiting the black communities in Philadelphia and America. Furthermore, the fundamental implications are first, that American leaders all along the nation's ideological spectrum ought to focus attention on questions about the public policies that can offer hope of improving racially unequal material conditions, rather than belaboring undesirable social attitudes of American Asians, Blacks, and Latinos in ways that generate more anxiety than answers. Quoted by King and Smith in 2011. However, not all respectability politics are considered to be harmful to the black community, and more specifically, black masculinity. Respectability politics can be used to encourage African American men to take control of their own grievances and revert and change the African American narrative to mean what they want it to mean. Quoted by Musgrove in 2012. Respectability politics bring back the ideas from the era of civil rights movement, and that black men should use their voice to change the global view of black people on a large scale. Although black politicians neglect the power they hold to change the image of the black narrative through legislation, not through attitude as seen in Philadelphia with Mayor Nutter, and throughout the numerous black politicians we see on the world stage today. Movements such as Ban the Box and Black Lives Matter that have gained tracking from black male politicians such as Barack Obama and Cory Booker are positive examples of respectability politics changing ideas of black masculinity in America.
When beginning research for our topic, I thought we would find a lack of agency, self-defined identity, and representation of black men within politics, specifically Congress. This was due to the knowledge of America's racial history and the continued policing of black men. I found I was close, although I was unaware of the necessity of political integration and the policing of black ideology in relation to racial consciousness and how the use of rhetoric by the media influences this ideological policing. I chose this topic because the concept of masculinity within United States politics and policy making was something I would have liked to be able to connect and analyze, since we have been analyzing the ways policies are influenced by the portrayal of black masculinity. I learned that black male politicians are policed for being black with assumed lack of racial consciousness, while also being conspired against for perpetuating a black agenda. This denies them the opportunity to hold beliefs without being seen as too black or too white. This helps us better understand the impact of policing black men on political representation and agency. This information helps to show the level to which multiple arenas of policing influence black men's ability to make change within our political system, specifically upon racialized depictions and public policies that consistently and negatively impact the black community.